On this week's Vaticano, 34 of the world's newest archbishops receive a special honor and responsibility from Pope Francis. We catch up with some of the Americans among them. Also, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco speaks to us about the Supreme Court's recent ruling on same-sex marriage. The Liturgy and the new Evangelization is discussed at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross, and the Vatican's communications chief heads to Amman, Jordan. Also, we catch up with the head of Mary's Meals, fresh off a meeting with the Pope, and this year's Catholic Film Festival is celebrated in Rome. All this coming up.
On June 29th, the feast of Saints Peter and Paul, the patrons of Rome, Pope Francis bestowed the pallium on 34 metropolitan archbishops. The pallium, or palio, is a woolen vestment that symbolizes the sheep over the shoulders of the pastor. In his homily, the Holy Father touched on the mission of the Bishop of Rome and that of all bishops, their inheritance from the time of the first apostles.
To confess the Lord by letting oneself be taught by God, to be consumed by love for Christ and His gospel, to be servants of unity. These, dear brothers and sisters, are the tasks which the holy apostles Peter and Paul entrust to each of us, so that they can be lived by every Christian.
The Pope invited all the bishops and archbishops present to let themselves be guided by the faith, to go out of themselves to serve the people of God.
Whenever we let our thoughts, our feelings, or the logic of human power prevail, and we do not let ourselves be taught and guided by faith, by God, we become stumbling blocks. Faith in Christ is the light of our life as Christians and as ministers in the Church. The Bishop of Rome is called himself to live and to confirm his brothers and sisters in this love for Christ and for all others, without distinction, limits, or barriers. And not only the Bishop of Rome, each of you, new archbishops and bishops, have the same task, to let yourselves be consumed by the gospel, to become all things to everyone. It is your task to hold nothing back, to go outside of yourselves in the service of the faithful and holy people of God.
Al servizio del santo popolo fedele di Dio.
Pope Francis said that the variety within the Church is a great wealth that has to be protected, and that the pallium, symbol also of communion with the universal Church, commits the entire College of Bishops to being instruments of unity.
In the Church, variety, which is itself a great treasure, is always grounded in the harmony of unity, like a great mosaic in which every small piece joins with others as part of God's one great plan. This should inspire us to work always to overcome every conflict which wounds the body of the Church, united in our differences. There is no other Catholic way to be united. This is the Catholic spirit, the Christian spirit, to be united in our differences. This is the way of Jesus. The pallium, while being a sign of communion with the Bishop of Rome and with the Universal Church, with the Synod of Bishops, also commits each of you to being a servant of communion.
E anche un impegno per ciascuno di voi ad essere strumenti di comunione.
At the conclusion of the ceremony, the pontiff prayed before the tomb of St. Peter with the Orthodox Metropolitan Ioannis Sizioulas. With this great ecumenical gesture, the Pope reached out to the Orthodox churches, but also to all of the Christian world, to continue a fruitful theological dialogue. The pallium is a vestment given to new metropolitan archbishops by the Pope. Made of white wool, it takes the form of a circular ornament that is placed over the shoulders. 2 rectangular pieces hang over the chest and the back. There are 5 black or red silk crosses sewn into the garment, which is also adorned with 3 nails that symbolize the Passion of Christ. The pallium is made with a wool of lambs blessed previously by the Pope. The Benedictine nuns of St. Cecilia are in charge of producing the pallium from the just shorn wool. During the feast of Saints Peter and Paul on June 29th, the palliums are blessed and given only by the Pope to the newest of archbishops of metropolitan sees, all named throughout the previous year. And it is precisely one of these archbishops, that of Mendoza, Argentina, who speaks of what it is like to receive the pallium from a person you know.
Recibir el palio del Papa, más allá de la persona concreta.
Receiving the pallium from the Pope, beyond his concrete person, is a big pastoral responsibility and commitment. That is to say, the Pope puts on our shoulders the pastoral weight of the sheep that have been entrusted to us, represented by this piece of cloth made of sheep's wool. And clearly, when he who places the pallium on you in the faith recognizes you as a bishop and brother in the episcopate, it is beautiful and moving. But it also has a unique flavor when he who bestows the pallium knows you, knows your name, your history. He has shared his reflections with you, his concerns, shared difficult and great moments with you, because we shared all these things in the Episcopal Conference of Argentina.
Compartimos todas estas cosas.
After the Mass, here at the North American College, 3 of the U.S. archbishops who received the pallium received pilgrims. It was a family affair. A chat and even a closer look at the vestment brought pastors close to their flocks for a moment of community and of reflection after the special moment with the successor of St. Peter.
I am literally on cloud 9. I mean, the experience of receiving this incredible gift from the Holy Father, this pallium, this sign of my communion with him and with the Universal Church is just really an overwhelming experience. I have to say, when we began the procession in and the music started and the choir was singing the Tu es Petrus, you are Peter, it was a surreal moment for me. I just got the chills realizing that I'm processing into St. Peter's Basilica with the successor to St. Peter. It was just incredible.
Well, if I was honest, I'd say I feel a little dazed. It was an emotional experience to be there. It's an emotional experience to be here with my people, because there are about 100 people that came from Indianapolis, and the pallium for me is a sign of my responsibility to them.
And actually, it was a very moving experience. It was kind of hard to believe that it was actually happening to me. I was actually reflecting with Archbishop Sample before the Mass about reflecting back on starting out our journeys as seminarians and as priests. And I shared with him reflecting back to when I was named a pastor, wondering if even I had what it took to be a pastor, if I could manage things. So I just never would have imagined this day would have arrived in my life. But it's a sign of God's providence, and God takes care of us when we try to do his will as best we can with the help of his grace.
It was the first Mass for the solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul celebrated by Francis as Pope, and he left a lasting impression on the archbishops.
Before the procession began, when he arrived for the procession, first he came in and greeted each one of the new archbishops personally before he went and got vested himself for Mass. So we got a few minutes to exchange some words with him there.
I thanked him for his service to the church, and he mentioned San Francisco, and when I met him before Mass, I introduced myself as being from the Archdiocese which bears his name, San Francisco, and he remembered that. So I invited him to come, and maybe he seemed willing to do so, so it would be a great blessing for us to receive him in the diocese which bears his name.
The archbishops are thus part of the bridge generation, having been appointed by Pope Benedict XVI and welcomed by Pope Francis.
Stay with us. After the break, we'll interview Archbishop Cordileone of San Francisco on defending the definition of marriage. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano.
While celebrations were going on in Rome over the week, back at home, the Supreme Court made a decision that seriously set back the work of those defending marriage as the union between one man and one woman. The Supreme Court ruled June 26 that it is up to states to define marriage individually, that the federal government must accept each state's definition, and that there is no legal foundation for recourse on a federal level. And they overturned California's Proposition 8, a piece of legislation that protected the definition of marriage in that state. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco spearheaded Proposition 8 and chairs the U.S. Bishops' Conference Subcommittee for the Promotion and Defense of Marriage.
This is very serious. Most worrying of all is that because the court decided the proponents of the initiative have no standing in court, it means that we have no recourse for the law of the state to be defended. What happened was when the plaintiffs filed in federal court, those who were elected to office with the duty of defending the law of the state refused to do so. So there was no one to defend the law. This was a law that was passed by the citizens. A lot of citizens worked very hard. Some people made great sacrifices, especially financial sacrifices. And the people voted on it. 7 million people voted to approve this. And now there was no one to defend the law of the state. So the proponents had to jump in order to do that. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals granted them standing in trial, although it overturned the decision. And now the Supreme Court vacated that decision because they decided not to give the proponents standing in court. So this means that they worked so hard, sacrificed so much, engaging in the democratic process, and people voted for this law, and now there's nobody to defend the law. And they have no right to have the law defended that they worked so hard to get passed. So it's very, very worrisome about what the future of our democracy is. And already, the problem is the idea of marriage had already changed in the culture a long time ago. And that's why it's possible for people to accept this very novel idea of marriage, because they had already shifted from understanding marriage as being an institution focused on the child for the purpose of the child. It's the only institution that unites a child with the child's mother and father. So every human society has recognized the importance of that. But for a long time now, we've shifted that to the adults, that it's an institution that's for the mutual benefits of adults. And so we've gotten away from the idea that it's a permanent, lifelong commitment. If it's for adults, you stay in the relationship as long as you're receiving benefits and getting something out of it. And once you don't, then divorce becomes a lot easier to accept. Children sometimes are more of a lifestyle choice than the fruit of a loving, lifelong union of a man and a woman. So these ideas, classic ideas of marriage that really speak to the beauty of what that commitment of marriage is, are now seen as antiquated. It will be much, much harder now that the law has enshrined the principle that marriage is not about uniting children to their mothers and fathers, but it's about giving affirmation to adults. Of course, to the law based on our rights has been taken away. In terms of the public square, we have to really think that through. In terms of church, I mean, I'm a pastor of souls. We pastors of souls, our job remains unchanged. And I've said to many people many times that regardless of how the Supreme Court decides, our role as pastors is the same. We need to educate our people about marriage. Like I said, the idea of marriage has already changed a long time ago. We have a huge task to help our people understand what the real purpose and meaning of marriage is, and how it fits into God's plan, and how it fits into, for married couples, how it fits into God's plan for their own sanctification and eternal salvation.
The head of the Vatican's communications office was here in Amman in Jordan in June, sharing best practices of communicating for peace in the Middle East.
The idea was to have a dialogue between Muslim journalists and Christian journalists. And the theme of the Congress was simple: to see how the Christian media, with their presence, they can favor dialogue, understanding, and promoting peace. You know the situation of Jordan. It's quite difficult now also for the problem of the refugees from Syria. And we thought that was good to have such a small Congress, having the presence of people coming from the Islamic world. And I can say that I myself, I was received by the Prime Minister, and we were having a very fruitful and positive encounter, talking about the situation, but also the wish of the Holy See to create a culture to promote through the media, the Catholic media, to promote a culture of understanding and promoting, no doubt at all, peace in the region.
The Congress marks just another initiative in which the Vatican is working to assist the Middle East in finding a route to peace amid so much unrest. Liturgists and liturgy enthusiasts from throughout the world gathered at Rome's Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in June to speak of the sacred liturgy and its part in evangelizing.
Well, I think as the whole conference is based on the liturgy, formation, celebration and mission, and the mission being very much conscious of the new evangelization called for by Blessed John Paul II and subsequent popes continuing. The liturgy is the foundation of our Christian life. Without it, we haven't got a Christian life. The liturgy, the sacraments sustain us, they nourish us, they heal us, they put us in connection with the person of Christ. And we can't be evangelists unless we're in connection with him. And if our connection is somehow less strong or less perfect than it could be, then we suffer from that as Christians and therefore as evangelists. And really we're trying to say that the true celebration of the liturgy as the Church gives it to us in her tradition, new rites, old rites, all together, they're all important for forming us as Christians so that we can be evangelizers in this world of today.
For me it's very important to think that the new evangelization is a target for the Church now in the situation of secularization, above all in Europe. And so in this new evangelization, the liturgy has a special place, because the liturgy asks us to put the primacy of the grace before all our efforts to go on to announce Jesus Christ. And in a world where it's secularized, the liturgy presents another word, a word where the presence of God is real, is effective. And we are in a world of image, of many words. And so we have in the liturgy the real presence of God, the personal presence of Jesus Christ in the sacraments. And it's by the liturgy is the source and the objective, the target of the mission.
Thanks for watching Vaticano. After a brief pause, we'll be back with the head of Scotland's Mary's Meals program and the 2013 Mirabile Dictu Catholic Film Festival. Welcome back. This is Vaticano.
After the last general audience before his summer break, Pope Francis met with Magnus MacFarlane Barrow, head of the charity Mary's Meals. The Pope had asked specifically for MacFarlane Barrow and his wife to come to Rome after seeing Child 31, a film about the work of Mary's Meals.
Mary's Meals began in 2002 in Southeast Africa, in Malawi, just feeding a small number of children. We gave this work very specially to Our Lady and called it Mary's Meals. And today we're feeding over 750,000 children every day in school. So we always link the meal to education and use the meal to draw them into school. And then the projects where we feed are mainly in Africa, also in India and Haiti and the Philippines and so on. Vision for the future is that every child in the world should be able to receive at least one good meal every day. And we really believe that's possible in this world of plenty. So that's always what drives us on. Meanwhile, the challenge is to raise awareness and to raise funds so that we can feed those next children on the waiting list. There's always more to reach.
Mary's Meals has seen an increase in support after continued encouragement from Pope Francis for the world to give help to the most in need.
These people have lost everything.
The International Catholic Film Festival, Mirabile Dictu, has celebrated its 4th edition. 17 films divided into 7 categories vied for the prestigious Silverfish Prize. In collaboration with the Pontifical Council for Culture, the president of the festival, Liana Marabini, created the festival for a single objective: to evangelize through cinema.
This festival is a manifestation that was created 4 years ago with the aim to evangelize. As I consider that a film is a very accessible form of art, and everybody can understand a film more than a book, more than whatever else. I thought that the festival could be a good instrument to do that. Not only this, but during the festival we discover films that after will be distributed in the whole world. Catholic films, of course, meaning films with very solid moral values and positive heroes.
These films, these documentaries, these testimonies are very important because they reflect the debate and the attention that exists today on these arguments. It is not just a technical documentation of a faith or a testimony, but also a reflection of a world that is arguing about faith, religion, and beliefs, about revelation and God. God is back in the limelight after a long period of silence. The Vatican's Pontifical Council for Culture promotes the use of new artistic forms to bring the gospel message to the world. Film, as the Council's Monsignor Franco Perazzolo sees it, is a privileged way of communicating, a true sign of the times.
Il cinema occupa un posto molto importante, anche perché
film occupies an important place. It is defined as the 7th art form, and as art, in my opinion, it helps us to capture the invisible, the transcendent, as we believers would say, that part of us that we define as the mystery. Having an art that takes up this dimension of man is truly a providential gift. I believe that those attempts to create documentary, cinematographic, and television productions that wish to translate this through images, the highest aspirations of the human person, above all in the search for meaning in our own lives, I think that they should be promoted and appreciated.
Dentro la propria vita, credo vadano incoraggiate ed apprezzate.
Of the finalists, the story of the life of Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, the first Native American saint.
So Kateri was a fascinating saint. She lived in the 17th century in one of the tribus, of the Iroquois tribus. And when she was 12, as tradition was imposing, her relatives, because she didn't have the parents anymore, they were dead when she was 4 years old. Her relatives asked her to get married, and she said no, because she wanted to conserve her virginity for somebody much more important than a husband. It was God. And from that moment, he became something like a slave, because not being married in such a century and in such an environment, you were not counting nothing. So she suffered very much until the day she met a Jesuit priest who understood her wonderful faith and brought her to baptism first and after to the religious life. And so this wonderful life of this wonderful saint inspired the film that was produced by Salt and Lake TV. Canadian TV.
Among the works that were recognized, David Wall's film titled Noel brought home the Best Picture and Best Director awards.
Here, I leave you. All is forgiven.